New Mexico Territory, 1881. The day broke harsh and unforgiving, sun climbing over ragged mountains to cast long shadows across the dust-choked valley. Three riders pushed their exhausted horses hard along the old Santa Fe Trail, their faces hidden beneath sweat-stained bandanas, eyes darting nervously toward the rocky ridgelines above. Behind them, a lone horseman followed at a measured pace. No hurry in his posture, just the steady, inevitable rhythm of death on their trail. Chosa Hayes sat tall in the saddle, a Winchester 73 resting across his thighs, the brass receiver catching sunlight like a beacon. His face, weathered as canyon walls, eyes the color of gunmetal, betrayed nothing as he studied the distant dust cloud kicked up by fleeing men. They had robbed a stagecoach at Blackwater Crossing, killed the driver, left passengers for dead. It wasn't Chosa's fight until they crossed onto Mescalero land, sacred ground where his mother's people buried their dead. Now it was personal. The bandits reached a narrow pass between towering red rock formations. Perfect. Chosa dismounted, patting his dun quarter horse's neck. "Wait here, Judas," he murmured. The animal snorted understanding. Moving like shadow over stone, Chosa scaled the western ridge, rifle slung across his back. He'd fought for the Union during the war, scout and tracker, taught to move unseen through hostile territory. Before that, he'd learned to hunt from his mother's people, the Comanche, the Lords of the Plains. He reached position just as the first rider entered the pass. Took a slow breath, squeezed the trigger. The Winchester cracked, echoing off canyon walls. The lead rider tumbled from his saddle, dead before he hit ground. Second shot dropped another bandit as the third fled, spurring his mount toward a bend in the trail. Chosa descended rapidly, catching the fleeing man at the pass exit. No words exchanged, just steel and lead and justice in the New Mexico dust. After collecting their weapons and ammunition, Chosa found the strong box they'd taken from the stagecoach. Inside wasn't money as expected, but papers, letters, a journal, and a folded map. Curious, he flipped open the journal. September 15th, 1881. We flee west tonight. Clyde Hargan has given me until month's end to deliver Sarah as promised or face consequences. God forgive me for what I nearly did. My own daughter. Chosa frowned, tucking the journal inside his coat. Following the bandits' back trail, he found the stagecoach 2 miles east, horses still hitched but standing motionless in their traces. The driver lay sprawled across the bench, half his head gone. Inside, an older man in clerical clothes sat slumped against blood-stained upholstery, a Bible clutched in death-stiffened fingers. Beside him, a young woman, perhaps 20, lay unconscious, blood matting her hair where a bullet had grazed her skull. She lived, barely. As Chosa lifted her from the stagecoach, something caught his eye. Around her neck hung a pendant, 3 eagle feathers bound with sinew, decorated with beadwork in the Comanche pattern. His breath caught, not just any beadwork, the sacred pattern of Patanacona's band, his mother's people. "Who are you?" he whispered to the unconscious woman. Finding a folded letter in the preacher's pocket, Chosa read quickly, "Reverend Morgan, your debt of $100 and $200 to me will be forgiven upon delivery of your daughter Sarah to my ranch by month's end. Our agreement stands. Clyde Hargan." Chosa's jaw tightened. He'd heard of Hargan, cattle baron turned land speculator with a reputation for ruthlessness, the kind of man who collected people like property. With care, Chosa secured Sarah Morgan across his saddle, then retrieved Judas. The nearest town was 2 days' ride, and the woman needed immediate attention. His cabin in the foothills was closer, a day's hard ride. "Hold on," he told her, though she couldn't hear. "Just hold on." Sarah Morgan woke to firelight and the smell of pine smoke. Pain throbbed behind her eyes, her mouth desert dry. Rough-hewn log walls surrounded her, a cabin sparsely furnished but clean. She lay on a narrow bed, bandages wrapped around her head. "Don't move too quick." The voice startled her, deep, measured. A man sat at a table across the room, cleaning a rifle with practiced precision. Tall, broad-shouldered, with features that spoke of mixed heritage. High cheekbones and copper skin, but with a full beard and eyes that shifted between gray and blue depending on the light. "My father?" she whispered. "I'm sorry." Two words, simply stated. No platitudes. Sarah closed her eyes, tears leaking from beneath the lids. Not for love lost. Reverend Morgan had beaten that from her years ago, but for the terrible finality of it all. "Bandits?" she finally asked. "Three. They're dead." "Good." The vehemence in her voice surprised even her. Chosa set aside his rifle, studying her with new interest. "Your father sold you," not a question, "to Clyde Hargan for a debt." Her voice remained steady despite the words. "We were running. Father finally found his conscience, but too late. This pendant." Chosa touched his neck, indicating her necklace. "Where did you get it?" Sarah's hand went instinctively to the feathers. "My mother's. She gave it to me before she died. Said it would lead me home someday." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I never understood what she meant." Chosa poured water into a tin cup, brought it to her. As she drank, he said, "That's a Comanche talisman. Specifically, it belongs to a firekeeper." "A what?" "Among my mother's people, certain women are chosen to guard tribal memory, history, sacred knowledge." He paused. "Your mother, what was her name?" "Amara. She died when I was 12. Something flickered in Chosa's eyes. Recognition. "Amara," he repeated. "She was taken from the Comanche 30 years ago." Sarah stared at him, disbelieving. "My mother was—" She couldn't finish. "Comanche," Chosa confirmed. "And not just any Comanche. Your pendant marks her as a firekeeper's daughter." He met her gaze directly. "Which makes you the same." The room seemed to spin around Sarah. Her whole life, her identity, suddenly called into question. The reverend's daughter, raised in church pews and scripture, carrying Comanche blood? "Hargan's men will come looking for you," Chosa said, breaking the silence. "Can you ride?" "Yes." "Good. We leave at first light." Dawn broke blood red across the eastern ridges. Sarah emerged from the cabin to find Chosa saddling two horses, his dun-quarter horse and a smaller bay mare. "Here." He handed her a Colt Navy revolver, worn but well-maintained. "Ever used one?" She shook her head. "Time to learn." For the next hour, Chosa taught her the basics: loading, cocking, aiming. Her first shots went wild, but by the 20th, she was hitting the makeshift target with surprising accuracy. "You have good eyes," Chosa observed. "Steady hands, too." "My mother taught me to sew," Sarah replied, reloading the cylinder with newfound confidence. "Said I had a gift for detail work." Chosa nodded thoughtfully. "The Comanche blood shows." They packed light: ammunition, dried meat, coffee, basic medical supplies. Sarah wore trousers and a flannel shirt Chosa had given her, her torn dress abandoned. Her honey blonde hair, cut short after her injury, made her look boyish from a distance, a useful disguise. As she mounted the bay mare, Chosa pointed to distant mountains. 2 days' ride north. There's a valley where my mother's people camp during hunting season. Thunderhawk leads them now. And you think they'll— What? Welcome me? That pendant may open doors, or it might get us killed." Chosa shrugged. "We'll find out." They'd ridden less than 5 miles when Judas's ears pricked forward. Chosa raised a hand, signaling halt. Distant hoofbeats approached from the south, at least 4 riders moving fast. "Hargan's men," he said grimly. "Into the trees. Now." They barely reached cover when riders crested the ridge behind them. Four men heavily armed, led by a bull-necked brute with a scarred face. "That's Wade Callahan," Sarah whispered. "Hargan's foreman." Chosa nodded, calculating odds. "They'll track us into the woods. We need to split them up." He handed her the reins of both horses. "Follow the creek bed north. I'll meet you where it forks near the big cottonwood. Go." "But go, Sarah, now." She hesitated only a moment before leading the horses deeper into the pines. Chosa moved in the opposite direction, leaving clear tracks in the soft earth. A deliberate trail. Wade Callahan wasn't fooled. He sent two men after Sarah while he and another followed Chosa's tracks. A dangerous gamble, but one that played to Chosa's strengths. The dense pine forest fell silent, save for the soft crunch of boots on needles. Chosa moved like a ghost between trunks, circling behind his pursuers. The first man died with a knife between his ribs, never making a sound. Callahan, more cautious, fired blindly into the trees when he found his companion's body. "I know who you are, half-breed," Callahan shouted. "Chosa Hayes, the Army scout, the man who hunts men." Chosa didn't respond, moving steadily closer through the underbrush. "Hargan will pay double what the girl's worth just to watch you hang." A twig snapped. Callahan fired toward the sound, emptying his revolver. In the silence that followed, the metal click of Chosa's rifle cocking seemed thunderous. "Hargan doesn't own her," Chosa said quietly, stepping into view with the Winchester aimed at Callahan's chest. "No man does. She's property, legal and binding." Callahan sneered. "Her father signed her over fair and square." "Then her father was no man at all." The Winchester roared, knocking Callahan backward into the dirt. Chosa quickly reloaded, listening intently. Gunshots echoed from the creek bed. Sarah. He ran, heart pounding against his ribs. Found the creek bed empty, hoof prints leading north. Following at a sprint, he emerged into a small clearing in time to see Sarah wheeling her mare around, Colt raised with both hands. One of Hargan's men lay sprawled by the creek, motionless. The other fired wildly as his horse reared in panic. Sarah's shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him from the saddle. Their eyes met across the clearing. Chosa's wide with surprise, Sarah's blazing with newfound power. Comanche fire, he thought. "Are you hit?" he called. She shook her head, lowering the smoking revolver. "They came at me from both sides. I just reacted." Chosa approached the wounded man, who clutched his bleeding shoulder. "Tell Hargan the girl is under my protection now," he said coldly. "Tell him Chosa Hayes sends his regards." Fear flooded the man's face. "Jesus Christ, you're the Ghost Rider." The old Army nickname brought no emotion to Chosa's face. "Ride back to your master if you can. If I see you again, you won't leave breathing." When the man had staggered to his horse and fled, Chosa turned to Sarah. "We need to move faster now. They'll bring more men." "I killed a man," Sarah said quietly, staring at her hands. "You survived," Chosa corrected. "That's what matters on the frontier." She looked up at him, something new hardening behind her eyes. "Teach me more. Everything you know." "We've got 2 days' ride," Chosa replied, mounting Judas. "Might as well make them count." Part 2. The Hunt. They rode hard through broken country, pushing the horses as much as they dared. Chosa led them on game trails and dry creek beds, avoiding main roads and open ground. By nightfall, they'd covered nearly 30 miles of rough terrain. Camp that night was cold. No fire, too risky. They ate jerky and hardtack, huddled under a granite overhang as storm clouds gathered above the mountains. In the deepening darkness, Chosa taught Sarah to load and fire his Winchester, explaining trajectory and windage with the patience of an experienced marksman. "My father never let me touch firearm," she said, sighting down the barrel at a distant juniper. Said women had no business with weapons. The Comanche think differently, Chosa replied. Their women learn to shoot, ride, fight from childhood. Some even become warriors. And the firekeepers? What do they do? Chosa was silent a moment. They preserve what matters. Songs, stories, ceremonies, the soul of the people. He looked at her thoughtfully. Your mother must have seen something in you. Firekeeper gifts pass through bloodlines. I don't feel Comanche, Sarah admitted. I don't know their ways. Blood remembers what the mind forgets. Rain began to fall, pattering against rock and pine needles. Under its cover, Chosa allowed a small fire, just enough to ward off the mountain chill. As flames cast dancing shadows across the stone overhang, he told her about his mother, a Comanche woman named Morning Star, who had married a frontier doctor after her village was destroyed. My father treated her people during a smallpox outbreak, he explained, saved many lives when the army surgeon wouldn't. She said he had good medicine, good heart. What happened to them? Chosa's face hardened. Killed during the Red River War. Father was doctoring wounded Comanche. Army called it treason. I'm sorry. He nodded once, acknowledgement without self-pity. War makes monsters of good men. Peace makes liars of survivors. He looked at her directly. That's why I live between worlds now. Sarah wrapped her blanket tighter, studying this complex man. Not fully white, not fully Comanche, trusted by neither. A hunter of men who recited poetry from memory. A killer with a healer's knowledge of herbs and wounds. Why are you helping me? She finally asked. You could have left me in town or taken me to the authorities. That pendant, Chosa said simply, it's a sign. The Comanche believe in signs. And if your people reject me, then we'll find another way. His tone left no room for doubt. But they should know one of their own has returned. Dawn brought clearer skies but more ominous signs. Fresh hoof prints crossed their trail a mile north of camp, at least a dozen riders, heading toward Comanche territory. Hargan's not waiting, Chosa muttered, crouching to examine the tracks. He's called in every gun for hire in the territory. Why would he spend so much effort on me? Sarah asked. Pride, power. Chosa remounted. Men like Hargan don't accept being refused. They pushed harder, taking risks now, riding exposed ridgelines to make better time. By midday, they reached a high plateau overlooking vast stretches of valley and forest below. Chosa pointed to a distant smudge of smoke rising from a sheltered canyon. There, Thunderhawk's camp. How do we approach? They'll be watching for strangers. They already know we're coming, Chosa replied. They've been tracking us since we crossed the river. As if summoned by his words, riders appeared from the tree line below. 5 Comanche warriors on paint ponies, faces streaked with red ochre, rifles across their backs. The leader, a powerfully built man with a single eagle feather in his braided hair, raised his hand in greeting. Black Knife, Chosa explained. Thunderhawk's son, a friend. Sometimes they descended to meet the warriors, Chosa keeping Sarah slightly behind him. Black Knife's face remained impassive as they approached, his dark eyes moving from Chosa to Sarah and back. Ghost who walks between, he said in English. It has been many seasons. Too many, brother, Chosa replied, switching to Comanche. Their conversation continued in the native tongue, the warriors occasionally glancing at Sarah with undisguised curiosity. Finally, Black Knife nodded and gestured toward the distant smoke. Come, my father will decide your fate. What did you tell him? Sarah whispered as they fell in behind the warriors. That you carry a firekeeper's token, that enemies pursue us. Chosa kept his voice low. And that the daughter of Morning Star vouches for your blood. Will it be enough? We'll see. They rode in tense silence, descending into the canyon where Thunderhawk's people had made their seasonal camp. Dozens of high teepees stood in concentric circles around a central fire pit, women grinding corn and tanning hides, children playing among the lodges. All activity ceased as the strange procession entered camp. Before the largest teepee sat Thunderhawk himself, a man of perhaps 70 winters, face deeply lined but posture straight as a lance. His eyes, black as obsidian, missed nothing. Beside him sat a younger man with a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, his expression openly hostile. "Shadow Walker," Black Knife murmured, following Sarah's gaze. "My father's nephew. He has no love for white eyes." They dismounted, approaching the chief with proper respect. Chosa spoke in Comanche, gesturing occasionally to Sarah, who stood straight back despite her fear. Thunderhawk listened without interruption, his weathered face betraying nothing. When Chosa finished, the old chief rose slowly and approached Sarah. His gnarled fingers reached for the pendant at her neck, lifting it carefully to examine the beadwork and feathers. "Where did you get this?" he asked in surprisingly good English. "My mother Amara," Sarah replied steadily, "before she died." A murmur ran through the gathering crowd. Thunderhawk exchanged glances with an elderly woman who had emerged from a nearby teepee, her face a web of wrinkles but her eyes sharp as flint knives. "Nakoma," Chosa whispered to Sarah, "the tribe's medicine woman." Nakoma approached, moving with surprising grace for her age. She took Sarah's face between her hands, turning it toward the light, studying every feature with intense concentration. "Amara's daughter," she finally announced, her voice cracking with emotion. "The eyes do not lie." Thunderhawk stepped back, visibly shaken. "My granddaughter returns," he said, his voice like dry leaves rustling. "After 30 winters." Sarah swayed on her feet. "Granddaughter?" But there was no time for explanations. A young warrior raced into camp, breathless with urgency. "Riders approaching! Many guns!" Shadow Walker spat on the ground. "The white eyes follow you like wolves," he accused Chosa. "You bring death to our camp." "No," Thunderhawk countered sharply. "They come for the girl. They would come regardless." He turned to Black Knife. "Prepare the warriors. We defend our own." Sarah stepped forward. "This is my fight. I won't bring danger to your people." "You are Comanche," Thunderhawk replied simply. "Your fight is our fight now." Chosa moved beside her. "Hargan's men will have us outnumbered. We need to choose the battlefield carefully." Thunderhawk nodded grimly. "The Spirit Canyon. Narrow approach. Good defense." Within minutes, the camp mobilized with practiced efficiency. Women gathered children and essential supplies, retreating deeper into the canyon network. Warriors collected weapons, rifles, bows, lances, and mounted their horses. As Sarah prepared to join them, Nakoma approached with a small clay pot of red ochre. "For battle," the old woman explained, painting 2 straight lines across Sarah's cheekbones. "To honor Amara, to show your enemies the fire in your blood." Sarah felt something stir inside her, ancient, powerful, like embers long dormant, suddenly fanned to flame. Nakoma's weathered hands moved to the pendant, adjusting it reverently. "Firekeeper's daughter," she said softly. "Today you become who you were always meant to be." Part 3. Return to the tribe. Spirit Canyon opened like a wound in the earth, steep walls of striated rock rising hundreds of feet above a sandy floor, barely 30 yards wide. A perfect defensive position. Comanche warriors concealed themselves among the rocks while Chosa, Sarah, and Black Knife waited at the canyon mouth. The riders approached slowly, wary of ambush. Clyde Hargan himself led them, a broad-shouldered man with steel-gray hair and cold eyes, flanked by a dozen hired guns. Wade Callahan was conspicuously absent. "That's far enough," Chosa called when they were within earshot. Hargan reined his horse, signaling his men to halt. His gaze fixed on Sarah, standing proudly between Chosa and Black Knife, red war paint stark against her skin. "Well, well," Hargan drawled. The preacher's daughter gone native. Your father must be spinning in his grave, girl. My father sold me like cattle, Sarah replied, voice carrying clear in the still air. I owe him nothing. You're my property, legally purchased. Hargan patted his saddlebag. Got the papers right here. Chosa stepped forward, Winchester held casually but ready. She belongs to no one, especially not a man who buys women. Hargan's eyes narrowed. Hayes, should have known you'd stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Always had a weakness for lost causes. He gestured to his men. I've got 12 guns, says she leaves with me. And I have 20 warriors who say otherwise, Chosa replied evenly. As if on cue, Comanche fighters rose from hiding positions around the canyon. Arrows knocked, rifles aimed. Hargan's men shifted nervously, hands hovering near holsters. You'd start a war over some girl? Hargan asked incredulously. Not just any girl. Thunderhawk emerged from the shadows, his voice strong despite his years. The granddaughter of a chief, blood of my blood. Sarah felt a surge of pride at the old man's words. Whatever happened next, she was no longer alone, no longer unwanted. Hargan's jaw tightened as he reassessed the situation. I paid good money. To a man who had no right to sell her, Chosa interrupted. Amara was Comanche royalty, stolen from her people. Her daughter belongs here, with her true family. A tense silence fell. Hargan's men exchanged uneasy glances, clearly having expected an easy retrieval, not a standoff with determined Comanche warriors. There's another way, Chosa said, breaking the silence. You and me, Hargan, one-on-one, your choice of weapons. Surprised murmurs ran through both groups. Hargan's eyebrows rose. You challenging me to a duel breed? Call it what you want. You win, you take the girl. I win, you and your men ride away and never return to Comanche land. Sarah started to protest, but Black Knife touched her arm, shaking his head slightly. This was the way of men. Decisive. Final. Hargan considered the offer, calculating odds. He fancied himself a gunfighter in his younger days, and Hayes, for all his reputation, was just one man. Fine, he finally agreed. Pistols, 20 paces. They cleared a stretch of sand at the canyon mouth. Warriors and hired guns formed a loose circle, weapons ready in case of treachery. Sarah watched, heart hammering against her ribs, as Chosa checked his Colt methodically. I can't let you do this, she whispered. My choice, he replied quietly. My fight now. Thunderhawk approached, laying a gnarled hand on Chosa's shoulder. The spirits of our ancestors watch, he said solemnly. Fight with their strength. The duelists took position, backs together in the center of the makeshift arena. At Black Knife's signal, they began pacing off the distance, boots crunching on sand. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't move, as 20 steps separated the men. Turn and fire, Black Knife commanded. Time seemed to slow. Both men pivoted, revolvers rising. 2 shots cracked almost simultaneously, echoing off canyon walls. Hargan staggered, clutching his chest, disbelief flooding his face as he dropped to his knees. Chosa remained standing, but his left arm hung limp, blood darkening his sleeve. It's done, he announced, voice carrying to all present. Take your boss and go. Hargan's men hesitated only briefly before moving to help their fallen employer. He lived barely, the bullet having struck just below his collarbone. As they lifted him onto his horse, Hargan's hate-filled eyes fixed on Chosa. This isn't over, Hayes, he rasped. Yes, Chosa replied calmly. It is. They watched until the last rider disappeared from sight. Then Nakoma hurried forward to tend Chosa's wound. The bullet had passed clean through his upper arm, painful but not life-threatening. You risked much, Thunderhawk told him as Nakoma worked. For one you barely know. Chosa's eyes found Sarah's across the gathering. Some things are worth the risk. That night, the Comanches celebrated their bloodless victory with dancing and feasting. Sarah sat beside Thunderhawk at the central fire, listening in wonder as he spoke of her mother. Amara was to be our next firekeeper, he explained, taken during a raid by white settlers when she was 16 summers. We searched for years, but she had vanished. His weathered face showed ancient grief. And now her daughter returns to us? I know nothing of your ways, Sarah admitted. I was raised in the white man's church. But you have the fire, Nakoma interjected, settling beside them. I saw it when you faced Hargan, the same fire Amara carried. She touched the pendant at Sarah's throat. This is no ordinary token. It contains sacred knowledge, memory passed from one firekeeper to the next. I don't understand. You will, Thunderhawk assured her. The knowledge sleeps in your blood, waiting to awaken. Across the fire, Chosa sat with Black Knife and other warriors, his wounded arm bound in poultice-soaked bandages. Throughout the evening, his gaze often sought Sarah, something unspoken passing between them. Later, as celebrations wound down, Nakoma led Sarah to a small teepee at the camp's edge. Inside burned a fire unlike the others, fed with specific woods and herbs that released sweet-smelling smoke. The firekeeper's lodge, Nakoma explained, empty since Amara was taken. Now it will live again. Sarah hesitated at the entrance. I'm not ready. I don't know who I am anymore. None of us do until we find our purpose. The old woman smiled gently. Sleep here tonight. Let the ancestors speak to your dreams. Alone in the teepee, Sarah watched flames dance and spark. Her whole life had been a lie. The stern preacher not her true heritage, the church not her true home. Yet somehow, sitting beside this sacred fire, she felt a sense of belonging she'd never known. Outside, footsteps approached. Chosa ducked through the entrance, respectfully remaining near the doorway. How's the arm? She asked. I'll live. He glanced around the teepee, recognition in his eyes. The firekeeper's lodge. They've accepted you completely. I don't know if I'm ready, Sarah admitted. Everything's happening so fast. Chosa nodded understanding. You don't have to decide tonight or tomorrow. The people will give you time. And you, what will you do now? A complex emotion crossed his face. Longing, uncertainty, resolve. I've lived between worlds too long. Perhaps it's time to choose one. The Comanche? I was thinking of a new world, he said quietly, one we might build together. The simple declaration hung in the smoke-laden air between them. Not a profession of love, they barely knew each other, but an acknowledgement of possibility. Two souls, both displaced, finding unexpected connection. I'd like that, Sarah said finally. Whatever comes next. Chosa reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small object wrapped in soft buckskin. Nakoma asked me to give you this. Sarah unwrapped it carefully. And inside lay a carved bone knife, handle inlaid with turquoise. A firekeeper's tool, Chosa explained, for cutting herbs, preparing medicines, carving symbols that preserve memory. She ran her finger along the blade's edge, feeling ancient power in the simple tool. Tell Nakoma thank you. I'll learn to use it properly. Chosa nodded, rising to leave. At the entrance, he paused. Tomorrow, Thunderhawk will hold council. They'll give you a Comanche name. Any suggestions? A rare smile touched his lips. Nita, one who returns. After he'd gone, Sarah, soon to be Nita, sat alone with the sacred fire. Outside, night winds sang across the canyon rim. Inside, flames danced to their own rhythm, casting shadows that seemed to take the shape of women long past. Firekeepers who had sat where she now sat. Guardians of a people's soul. Her mother had been one of them, had known somehow that her daughter would return to take up the mantle. The pendant around Sarah's neck felt suddenly warm against her skin. I'm home, she whispered to the dancing flames. I'm finally home. Dawn painted the canyon walls blood red as the Comanche gathered for the naming ceremony. Thunderhawk sat cross-legged before the central fire, sacred pipe in his gnarled hands. Beside him, Nakoma arranged ceremonial items, eagle feathers, a buffalo horn cup filled with sacred water, sage bundles for cleansing. Sarah approached slowly, dressed in a buckskin dress Nakoma had given her, hair brushed until it shone like spun gold in the morning light. The firekeeper's pendant hung prominently at her throat. Chosa stood nearby, freshly bandaged, his face solemn but eyes bright with something like pride. She knelt before Thunderhawk, head bowed in respect. The old chief studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Daughter of my daughter," he began, voice carrying to all gathered. "You come to us carrying two worlds in your heart, the world of your father, who betrayed sacred trust, and the world of your mother, who never forgot her people even in captivity." He lifted the sacred pipe, drawing smoke and offering it to the four directions. "Today we give you your true name, the name your spirit has always known, even when your mind did not." Nakoma stepped forward, taking Sarah's hands in her own. "I knew your mother from childhood," she said softly. "She had the sight, the ability to see beyond what eyes show. This gift passes to you now." Thunderhawk dipped his thumb in red ochre, drawing a single line from Sarah's forehead to the bridge of her nose. "From this day forward, you are Nita, one who returns, granddaughter of Thunderhawk, daughter of Firekeepers, blood of our blood." A murmur of approval ran through the gathered tribe. "The path of a firekeeper is not easy," Thunderhawk continued. "You must learn our ways, our songs, our stories. You must preserve what might otherwise be lost." "I will, Sarah," now Nita promised, "however long it takes." The ceremony continued with songs and prayers, the sharing of sacred food and water. Throughout, Chosa watched from the gathering's edge, a man still caught between worlds. When the formal rituals concluded, he approached Thunderhawk. "I ask permission to remain with the people," he said in Comanche, "to help Nita learn our ways, to serve as bridge between her worlds until she finds balance." Thunderhawk considered the request, exchanging glances with Black Knife and other tribal leaders. Finally, he nodded. "The son of morning stars welcome among us. Your skills as hunter and warrior will serve the people well." Shadow Walker, who had remained ominously silent throughout the proceedings, stepped forward. "He brings danger," he objected. "The white man Hargan will not forget this defeat. He will return with more guns, perhaps even blue-coat soldiers." "Let them come," Black Knife responded firmly. "We are Comanche. We do not abandon our own out of fear." "The threat is real," Chosa acknowledged, "but I've fought white men and Indians both. I know their ways, their weaknesses." He looked directly at Shadow Walker. "Better to have me with you than against you." A tense silence fell. Then unexpectedly, Shadow Walker laughed, a harsh sound, but genuine. "You always were too clever for your own good, Ghost Rider." He extended his hand in the white man's custom. "I will watch you closely, but I will also fight beside you if Hargan returns." As the gathering dispersed, Nita approached Chosa, something new in her bearing, a quiet confidence, a sense of belonging. "So you're staying," she said. "Appears that way." His eyes held hers steadily. "Someone needs to teach you to shoot straight." A smile touched her lips. "I hit what I aimed at yesterday." "Beginner's luck." "We'll see." Her expression sobered. "Hargan will come back, won't he?" "Probably. Men like him can't accept defeat." Chosa shrugged his good shoulder. "But he'll find us ready." Together they walked to the canyon's edge, looking out over the vast New Mexico landscape, red rock formations stretching toward distant blue mountains, the land their ancestors had defended for generations. "Two worlds," Nita murmured, unconsciously echoing Thunderhawk's words. "I never felt I belonged in either one." "Maybe we create our own world," Chosa suggested. something new from the pieces of the old. She glanced at him, this complex man who had risked everything for a stranger carrying a Comanche pendant, who had brought her home when she didn't know she had one. "I'd like that," she said simply. Below them, the Comanche camp stirred with morning activities, women preparing food, men checking weapons, children running between teepees. Her people now, her heritage reclaimed. In the distance, a lone eagle soared on thermal currents, wings outstretched against the endless sky. Free, powerful, at home in the vastness. Like the firekeeper's daughter, returned at last to where she belonged.